Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So I want to talk a little bit also about the role of policy, right? We've talked a lot about technology and economics. Policy, in particular, government policy, is also important. And I've been doing a lot thinking about plastics and single-use plastics. So this is what I would like to show. But there is a real role of policy in all of this, right? Because policy is one of the drivers that helps to make things happen. That biomining at the dump site, right, that was driven by policy. It is not an economically, positive approach. I thought it was, but it's not. But it's driven by policy. So sometimes, especially with environmental impacts, it's the way to move things forward. It's a way to make the policies be developed, right? We will, like even all our renewable electricity, the technologies have come substantially further in the last decade because of things like every company having to have a nationally, I'm not going to get the acronym right. Every country has to have a plan, right? And so every country is working to mitigate their greenhouse gas emissions. Those policies and those goals are driving the technology. So there's a critical role of policy to move things faster and to get things started. So just plastic flows through the economy. This is global. You can see only a tiny fraction in the United States. It's about 9% of plastics are recycled. And so even though we count on plastics, oh, it's recyclable, it's good. There's many, many steps. Consumer, the solid waste management facility, somebody's got to buy it. Only about 9% are recycled. So it's a very, very small amount. Most of it's discarded. Some of that is discarded and ends up appropriately, like in a landfill. Some of it is just litter. So there are big challenges there. I think based on just comments I've heard that so you make the nurdles again in the mechanical, right? You don't go back. And we've got all kinds of plastics, right? So it seems like you know that. Something's not right. Some of these are easier to recycle. Number one is the most widely recycled plastic, but it's still, much less than half. But that is most widely. But some of these are really hard, like thin, flexible, like grocery bags. Those are often not recyclable, the LDPE. And then when you get things like polystyrene or polycarbonate, the harder plastics, those are generally not recycled. So we lump plastics together often, but in reality, there are big differences in the materials that we use. So, and it seems like many of you know recycling goes past, right? So let's remember first our circular economy goal is post-consumer use. And our first goal is to use it and reuse it, right? Reuse over and over, which hard to do with single-use plastics, but other. Mechanical recycling brings back to making a plastic product, like making a new water bottle. Chemical recycling way back to making the monomers again. It takes, remember when we think about the circular economy, you want those circles and closer, right? By the time we get to mechanical recycling, that circle is getting bigger. When we get to chemical recycling, that circle is getting really big. And so, yes, it's going back and it is getting recycled, but it's taking a lot of energy and a lot of water to do that. The benefit, though, is you don't have to keep all those plastics separate. You can sort of mix them up. And it also is a little bit easier in terms of the contamination. You get higher rate of once you've collected, right? If you've collected, chemical recycling can do more mechanical recycling, but it takes a lot more energy and water to do it. And you don't have to do as much sorting of number one, six, and seven. So there's some pros and cons to chemical recycling, but the bottom line is the first thing you have to do is it, right? And that's a big bottleneck. So it breaks it all the way back down. So it's new petrochemical feedstock, but it's from recycled. So it goes all the way back to the refinery. So everybody understand that in terms of sort of the priorities from a circular standpoint, right? Pros and cons, more energy and water, but maybe more use of the material that's made. Once you shred it and make nurdle, clean as the originals are, so they be downcycled some. So all sorts of things to think about with recycling. Background. All right, so policy, right? A policy is just a, it's what establishes policies. The government, absolutely. State, federal, even local. Who else establishes policies? Global, right? Like the Montreal Protocol, CFCs. We've got within an industry, there might be policies, or at least do you have policies? Right? So hold policy, right? So anyone who can sort of dictate, and I mean dictate not in a bad word, but just in terms of dictate things, an industry, right? The CEO might, right, establish policies about like that NIP, right? They've established policies. Okay, so all sorts of things in the United States. We've got these many different ways through the regular, through our Congress. Okay? The president can just say, thou shalt do whatever. But anyhow, and then you have laws and regulations. So into that. Policy enforce and move towards a circular economy. I've given you a couple.
European Union policy on circular.
Okay, European Union, right? That's a big have to take their waste, properly sorted waste materials to some cycle collection facility. Any other ideas of policies that have helped towards a circular sustainable development guidelines are not really, really important because did them as policies. So the UN did not say that these are policies. But India, just places I've seen around here, I see even at the, the tourist attraction we were at Saturday, the Dakshin Chitra, they had the sustainable development goals posted and what they were doing about them. So they have adopted those at least as guidelines, right? Maybe not policies. Policies maybe is a little more enforceable. Guidelines are not enforceable, but policies should be enforceable. So yes, the answer is yes. 22, the UN environmental program decided that they were going to come up with a plastic policy well with the IPCC type of policies. The goal was just mostly driven by plastic pollution, even though it was broader than that. At meetings, like then, goal was to cut plastic pollution by 80% by 2040. That's sort of the litter. Do more reuse, more recycling, and just reorient, not wrapping everything in plastic. So just get the plastic packaging. But also they wanted to get rid of some of the hazardous materials in plastic. And some labeled something free. BPA, all bisphenol phthalate. It's been used in like baby bottles and a lot of the hard like. So hazardous, so trying to get rid of hazardous chemicals like that added. You might have polyethylene, but then you have added other things to make it the right stiffness and durability and things like that. So plastic is much more complicated than just like polyethylene. So get rid of those hazardous chemicals and to address the legacy problems, like all the plastics pollution in marine environments. That was the goal of the UN Environmental Program 3 years ago. They've had all sorts of meetings, and generally there's been two groups. The Global Coalition for Plastic Sustainability versus the High Ambition Coalition. The High Ambition Coalition really truly wanted substantial system level change. The other groups, which is mostly Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, and the United States, they say, oh, circular economy, we want to do circular economy, we will just recycle it all. They wanted that chemical recycling, and they thought circular economy equals recycling. The other group saw circular economy as lots of those other smaller circles before you get to recycling. So they're selling it. This is greenwashing to the hilt. It's like, we want to make more plastics out of oil. We will just recycle better. So that's sort of the goal, the two sides that we had. And so the high ambition countries really wanted to just reduce the amount of plastics that we use, just less plastics. If you have less, especially the single-use plastics, right, and packaging and things of that sort, and we still need recycling. But if you just reduce and refuse before you think about recycling, you're doing better. And then the American Plastics, so I showed you this diagram earlier, they really think that the solution is more recycling. Remember, we only recycle 9% of the plastics in the US. Even if we have better recycling facilities, you still have to get it there. So it is, yes, it's circular economy, but it's the wrong circle, in my opinion. And the high ambition countries, it's the wrong circle. So what happened, the latest was last August. Another international group, they just couldn't come to any decision. That was, August was supposed to be the meeting in which they came out with the treaty language, and they failed to do so. So they're going to meet again in February. Who knows? I doubt that they will ever get on the same page. I'm going to talk politics for a moment. It's just like what's happening at the COP climate meetings. The same thing is happening here. The oil industry has extremely strong lobbies. They are winning, whether it's in Saudi Arabia or the United States. So oil industry both wants to combust oil and they want to make plastics. And they are dominating our international policies. So unfortunately, there was an effort. So globally, it's not really happening. But let's look locally. So in New York State, it's starting in 2020, right before COVID, no more plastic grocery bags for groceries or like takeout. Then it got extended a year because of COVID, and everybody was getting takeout food, so they couldn't. So, but anyhow, right now in New York State, you are not supposed to. Vendors are not supposed to give out plastic bags. They still do. The big companies, the big grocery stores, they've changed, but the little vendors, they still are using plastic bags, and there's really no enforcement. So it's made a lot of change. And we saw the other day that switching to paper bags is not environmentally friendly. So the goal is that everybody brings their own bag, but of course that doesn't always work. But it is a very, and it's just addressing the end of use, right? I suppose it's addressing the whole life cycle. But so some bags are still in use. So it's really hard to enforce. So we already looked at this, and the paper bags maybe are not better. Cloth bags are definitely better if you reuse them. All right. So Chennai, the last time I was in Chennai was 2019, right when so I took these pictures of the newspapers when I was here in Chennai. Chuck the plastic, right? They were trying to do the same thing ahead of New York State, more than a year, to get rid of those and the single-use plastic containers. the small vendors were up in arms because they say, the plastic single-use food container, the roadside vendors are cheap, very, very inexpensive. And that's why people use single-use plastics from the vendor's perspective. They've since gone back to other materials, but this is what I saw. So I like taking pictures of these sorts of things. So that was even 2019. So, and then this was in the New York Times 2022 for this and how great its single-use plastic ban has gone, and that would be extended. And then this was just, this was more recent, April 2025. More plastic. I don't know what more we're getting banned. So, and this is what I've seen here. Campus, right? It does say no to plastics. Is that a guideline or is that a policy? It's a policy. I have seen plastic water bottles on campus, though. Ah, good. So no single-use containers of any sort. I wish my campus would do that. All right. And then I saw this, I'm not a plastic bag. Compostable plastics are still plastics. They're just made from plant-based materials. They're still big polymers that are still hard to break down. Often if you put them in a compost, they will break into little pieces. They'll disintegrate, but they don't necessarily break down to carbon dioxide and water. But anyhow, I thought that was interesting. So this was from our lunch on Friday. We had some leftovers that were taken to go. And so I saw that and I thought that was interesting. So is it working on campus? What do you think? Are these rules, for Chennai and state and for campus, are they working? All right. So I just, we've talked most about these discussion points. We've got to think about, do these plastic bans that really are at the end of life, do they really, the environmental impacts? We just bags, right? If the banning of the plastic bags means more paper bags use, that does not reflect all of the environmental impacts. It might be better on litter. It might be better on use of, toxicity in the manufacture. But it also needs a lot more energy and water to make those equivalent paper bag. Effective, right? You need enforcement at the vendor end and behavior change at the consumer end. Both are very, very hard to do. So places are trying. I'd say Chennai right now is about the same place as New York. The other thing New York is polystyrene, styrofoam, cups, and to-go boxes. Is the same true here? Do you see styrofoam?
Not in Punjab.
Not in Punjab. What about in Tamil Nadu? Polystyrene coffee cups? No. Yeah, all gone. So the question is, who decides, where do these policies come from? Who's pushing to have these policies? How do we make a government, for example, or IIT Madras? How do we push? How do we drive to have these policies?